GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is right here, this one, episode 144.
Episode 144, people. How's it going?
It's the Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Chargers. I am Ryan Wolfe, joined by John Cimino, as always this season. You can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. As always, make sure to hit subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, or also just hit subscribe as well to stay up to date on the latest podcast. John, it's the evening after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, man. I'm beat. I'm exhausted.
Dude, I am dragging knuckles right now. I had my Fast Twitch energy drink from Gatorade earlier. I love those things. And I don't think it's done anything.
Were you twitching fast? Like
Not today. Today I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to go back to sleep.
You want to know something funny, real quick story that might gross some people out, but it's just the human body is what it is.
Okay.
Celsius. I used to love drinking Celsius, right? Before they started, giving me heart palpitations and making me a little anxious. So I've slowed down. But for the longest time, I didn't realize. I'm like, why are my fingernails growing so quickly? It's because there's 1,000% of your daily biotin in the drink. So you have one a day, you're essentially getting your 1,000% of biotin. So I'm like, my fingernails are growing like weeds. Hilarious stuff. We're not a science podcast, though.
I legit would have had no idea, but that would, I suppose, make sense. If they have all that in the Fast Twitch or any of the other energy drinks that I drink every now and then, that would make sense. That's very interesting fact, Ryan.
I should crush up a Viagra and sprinkle it in one of your Fast Twitches, and you'd be like, "Is this a weird side effect I didn't know about?"
Oh, in that case, if I start humping your leg, you can't be surprised.
Like, John, I'm going to call Gatorade and I'm going to file a class action lawsuit, man. This is absurd. This is ridiculous.
File a class action lawsuit, and then in 10 years, we'll get our $4 check.
Yeah, that's the worst, man. But hey, speaking of humping legs, John,
yes,
the Buffalo Bills continue their thrust. Get it? The humping leg, the thrusting back into the AFC playoff picture with a 24-22 victory over the Los Angeles Chargers.
Legit, listeners, that was not planned either. He had the word thrust in the show document here. I didn't even look at it until just now when I brought it up after I made the humping the leg joke.
Bread and butter,
Talk
baby.
about being in sync, man.
Bread and butter. We're both 5-year-olds at heart. But hey, Buffalo improves to 9-6 on the season. A league best 17-2 in those December and January regular season games since 2020. Until they lose a December or January game, John, that stat ain't going anywhere because every week,
not at all.
I just erased the 6, put a 7. Next week, I'm going to erase hopefully the 7 and put an 8. 2 weeks from now, the 8 to a 9. Because again, these Buffalo Bills, man, they are white hot. We don't have a lot in the recap to talk about because there's a lot to talk about during the game. But here's the thing. It was not a pretty victory. But
no,
it's all about winning, just winning, get the win. It 1-0. As
right.
Offensive coordinator or interim offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, I'm taking creative licensing like when Tony Romo calls Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce's wife, despite that not being the case. I'm over here calling Joe Brady the offensive coordinator, and the guy don't even have the job yet. But every week they win, it's just 1-0. Doesn't matter how you get there. That's for people like us to discuss. But
exactly.
On the field,
1-0. Stack those wins. Doesn't matter how they come. Doesn't matter how ugly they are. By this point now, or at this point right now, it's crisis mode, and it's good that they are operating that way and more worried about getting the win and less worried about the statistical piece of it. Because, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. A win's a win. And if you're stacking those, you're going to be playing into January.
And we'll talk about it a little more as the podcast goes on, obviously, because there were some circumstances heading into the game, which for me, I don't like to be, I may come off, and you can ask a good friend of the podcast, who I may just start calling like our intern, our unpaid intern, Chris Downey, because him and I text throughout the game, and I may sound more pessimistic than optimistic, but I think it's more realism, where going into the week when the Chargers fired their head coach, excuse me, my first thought was, couldn't they have done this any other week than the Bills week? Because those are the types of games that historically, again, this Bills team, I'd have to look back and see, but historically with trap games, the Buffalo Bills don't do very well. Those are the ones where they lose and you go, crap. This is exactly what we expected to happen. And honestly, for the most part, the Chargers played much differently. I mean,
yes. They
before,
played with a little extra pep in their step this week, I felt.
And before we get too far into it, because I want to make sure we transition over to our three big things. John, 144 episodes, and I don't even know the podcast. This is embarrassing.
You write 144 episodes, you write every single one of them, and yet you're tripping over your words like you're me.
I'm excited about the game, though, man, even though it may not sound like it in my voice, because I got that, again, post-Christmas. Real quick, breaking on the fourth wall, like no joke, since Thanksgiving, my house has been spotless like a museum, because we've had Thanksgiving, we had my daughter's birthday, we've had Christmas, we've got my wife's birthday coming up. So it's like people are coming in and out of the house. So we're trying to keep it clean. So it's been very difficult to be like, oh, well, hey, this Saturday I'm going to wake up at 8:00 and I'm going to go fight my dog because he won't stop barking. 9:00 in the morning, and I'll clean from 9 until 1 or 2, maybe 3:00 in the afternoon. And at that point, like, I'm not being facetious when I sit here and tell you that I'm logging between 7.5 to 8 miles a weekend walking around my house.
Yep,
it's crazy.
I know that tremendously, because I do the same thing. Except it's a little bit different now that my kids are older. There's a large degree of self-sufficiency that they can do, even though they don't want to at times. Like I make them now, because it's like at this point, the discovery era is over. Pick up the crap on your floor, right? But I've been
exactly what needs to be done. Exactly.
I've been keeping up with the house since Thanksgiving. My girlfriend has been working 6-day weeks. She owns her own business, so in order to take a week off, she kind of has to front load several weeks in advance, so she can have this holiday week off. But she was working 6-day weeks, long days. And, wasn't really, was kind of coming home wiped out. So I wanted to make sure the house was nice and clean for her when she would come home, dish done, things like that. And, there was one day that not only did I do that, but we had a nice kind of break in the weather, in December one weekend. And I picked up the remaining leaves that fell off of the tree in front of my house. But that alone killed my bum ankle for about a half a week, and absolutely 8,000 steps easily
and I've been trying
within
to
the perimeter of the house.
I'm not gonna start a conversation here on the podcast about it, but John knows why. I've been picking up the slack even more, so I'm just very excited to sit down and talk. Well, first off, I'm excited to just sit down, but I'm also excited to sit down and talk about this game, man. Like it's here's the thing. The three big things are brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all your National Hockey League sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, John, wrapping up the offense, Josh Allen didn't have a sexy afternoon in the backfield. Statistically, I mean, granted, 15 for 21, 237 yards, a touch and a pick, which the pick was he underthrew Steph Diggs just a little. That would have been a really nice play. We're going to talk about Steph Diggs in a little bit, though. I think there's something else going on there. And then there's 5 carries for 15 yards with 2 touchdowns. So again, 3 total touches for Josh Allen. He had 252 total yards. That's the thing this year about the NFL that I kind of wanted to bring up here, is that with quarterbacks, there's not really a sexy, hey, I'm throwing for 300 yards and 4 touches or 3 touches a game. It's a lot of guys are grinding. One second here. Evelyn, you want to say hi? What's wrong? Why? Oh, she Can I give you a hug? Hi, Punk.
Now, I've done this a million times. Hi, honey.
You want to tell them about your favorite football team?
What's your favorite football team?
Who you love? You love the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah.
Say go, Buffalo. Say go.
Buffalo.
Yay, there you go. You say go Bills?
She's run away already.
Oh, she's running away. That was cute.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're gonna have to snag that as a sound bite.
One job that I've done is got her to love the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. But watching, I watched again. It's the Chiefs and Raiders. I watched the Chiefs and Raiders game, and I try to look at teams like the Chiefs, teams that you expect no matter what, good, bad, or indifferent. They're going to be good. They're going to win. And even they've looked bad. The only really good team that hasn't tripped up yet, I would say, is the Baltimore Ravens. But even at times they've had some struggles. So like every team
there's not really a dominant team this year, though. I feel like
I don't want to jump ahead, John, but now there's a 3-way tie atop the NFC. Earlier in this season, if you had told me that there would be a 3-way tie atop the NFC going into January, I'd call you crazy. Like right now, there's a chance that and Cowboys fans, including Mr. Perez, are probably hoping, praying, whatever it is that they do to will the Cowboys to win the division, because they could win the division and get the 1 seed, which would probably be best for them, because as we've learned, the Cowboys can't win games on the road.
Not at all.
But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But looking at the Buffalo Bills, like this kind of stat line is what's winning games in the NFL this season. Will it change? Possibly. But right now, with defenses doing everything that they can to stop these incredible offenses and these very talented quarterbacks, it's working. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that the Chargers showed up with this week was a completely different looking defense. I mean, they were getting Derwin James. They said on the broadcast they were getting Derwin James more in the star role to get him more active and around the ball, which I don't understand. Brandon Staley being a smart defensive mind, he never did that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are a lot of things that he never did that led to his downfall.
But it's possible that, you could be a great defensive mind, doesn't necessarily translate into being the best head coach, overall.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, look at Todd Bowles. I know the Buccaneers are, in first place right now in their division, but they're not first. They'd be last place in just about every other division, Yeah. Some guys just have it. As Rex Ryan, perfect example. Granted, he had those 2 seasons, those 2 miracle seasons in New York as the Jets head coach. He didn't do much else after that in both New York and in Buffalo. But he improved the defense. He was a great defensive coordinator. Saleh is, like for the Jets, I think he's a good motivator, but I'm not sure how well it translates into a head coach. And I see the show notes later. We'll talk about that in farther down, but. The point remains, just because you're good defensively doesn't mean holistically overall that's translatable.
Absolutely.
There may be a swim lane that you're just kind of dedicated to regardless. And that could be the instance for Staley there.
And with Josh Allen scoring his 40th total touchdown on Saturday, Allen becomes the first player in NFL history. Again, the first player in NFL history with
long history
with 4 consecutive 40 total touchdown seasons. Like, absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unreal. That is right there is uncharted waters. No one has ever done that before.
He ran for his 50th and 51st career rushing touchdown on Saturday too, which now he trails O.J. Simpson for second most rushing touchdowns in Bills history.
He'll beat that
by 6.
He'll beat that by early next season.
Like, that's the one thing about the Bills this year is that Josh Allen has almost doubled his output in total rushing touchdowns in a season. 13 this year. He had 7 last year.
I would say, and maybe it could be because of the fact that it's covered. It's the local team, right?
They're weaponizing him better, though.
I feel like in a sport where the quarterback position is always, the bar is always reset every year, it seems, right? Highest paid quarterback ever, right? There's very few that I feel tend to play the way that you play to their contract, right? And I feel like ever since, even before Josh Allen got the extension that he did, He overplayed his rookie deal. He got his pay. He's still like he's proving his worth and has proved his worth. Whereas, that there have been times in the past where some folks get their extension and then they just kind of mail it in because they're, it's guaranteed or whatever. Josh Allen doesn't seem to be one of those guys. And that's pretty awesome to see and easy to root for.
I mean, I think aside from the turnovers, which are just it is with the style of football that Josh Allen plays, turnovers are going to happen.
Yeah,
but
you can't gauge him on that. Like I see those memes all the time where, the NFL leader in turnovers since 2018 or 19 or whatever the hell it is Josh Allen. Yeah, but, when you factor all those turnovers into what he's actually outputting and how many games he's put on his shoulders, you got to give the dude a pass there.
I mean, you're looking this year, he's going to throw, I mean, again, he's at 27 right now, so he should hit 30 passing touchdowns for the fourth straight season. He should hit 4,000 passing yards for the fourth straight season. I mean, yeah, he's thrown for 15. He had 10, 15, 14, 15 picks, respectively, in each of the last 4 seasons. But again, being able to weaponize the type of player that he is, the reason I wanted to get down to this is that last year, he ran the ball 124 times, 762 yards, and 7 touchdowns. This year, he's run the ball 85 times, 413 yards, 13 touchdowns. And then moving forward on that one, out of 124 rushes last season, 55 were for a first down. This year, 85 rushing attempts, 42 for a first down. So again, it seems like they've found a more effective and more efficient way to weaponize Josh Allen's legs, because again, we know earlier in the season that he was kind of on a pitch count. He was on a bit of a leash when it came to running the ball.
Right,
it's very obvious. But as the season has gone on, they've certainly opened it up where, hey, James Cook doesn't have a ton of rushing touchdowns because Josh Allen in the red zone within, I would say within the sub red zone or whatever, if there's even a name for it, inside the 10-yard line, the ball's going to Josh, and it's like the tush push or the brotherly shove. I'm sorry. Josh Allen's taking the ball, and you're not going to be able to stop him. So that's one thing where I think the Buffalo Bills offense has definitely developed better. Now, looking, the one thing that kind of worries me is how the rest of the offense performed on Sunday, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But I think it's less of a sign of things to come and more of just signs of a long season. Fun fact, though, John, despite playing one full less season, Josh Allen has one less career rushing touchdown than Christian McCaffrey does.
That's crazy. Both arguably MVP considerations there.
Absolutely. McCaffrey 50. I think McCaffrey should be in the running for MVP. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the podcast, but it's a quarterback award. Allen became the third quarterback in NFL history with 13 plus rushing touchdowns in a season, joining Cam Newton, who had 14 with Carolina in 2011. Jalen Hurts, who had 13 in 2022 and 15 this season. Also, Josh Allen extended his NFL record for games with a passing and rushing touchdown in a season to 11 games. Now, rolling over to James Cook, again, one of those long season.
Think you listened to us last week?
Yeah, one of those long season type of deals here. 20 carries for 70 yards, no targets in the passing game. He did have 2 fumbles lost. I think James Cook had some fumbling issues in his rookie season for sure. They always popped up at the bat at the wrong time, and these 2 fumbles definitely almost cost the Bills the game. I mean, because you had those 2 lost fumbles. You had Josh's interception. Again, you never want to lose the turnover battle, but you have to find a way to play through that adversity. But the Chargers defense was hunting for the ball hard all game. Again, you simply can't make those mental mistakes.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes you just gotta tip your cap and go, hey, you know what? You guys are just a dog out there hunting the ball. I mean, they were on everything. They were on everyone. Trying to force the ball, trying to get any sort of momentum to twist their way to limit the Buffalo Bills having the football.
They played the game. They played the game that they wanted to. They wanted to be the spoiler. They knew that they were not going anywhere. The Chargers did. They wanted to play spoiler. They wanted to play it well. Kudos to them for doing that. Cook has had a hell of a season so far. And yes, I know the fumble issues have kind of, been what people have been going back to when it comes to the name James Cook. But in the same, he's done quite a bit for this team since that first fumble issue where he got benched in that Monday night game. And I think he gets a pass here too, especially because the Bills hung a W regardless. So.
It's amazing because last year he only had one. It says here he only had one fumble lost and recovered by own team. These represent all fumbles by the players. Yeah, so he only had one recorded fumble last year, but that was the first play of the game or his first rush of the season. This year he's had 4 fumbles, 2 in the last game. So I guess maybe it's not so much a fumble issue. It's just we've seen him be a little careless with the football in terms of protecting it, which makes the ball much easier to get your hands on. We saw it's same thing with Steph Diggs in the game where he was trying for a first down and kind of flipped his arm over with the ball tight. It's like those are the types of plays that are going to cost you. Those are the types of plays that you're trying to fight for that extra yard or two. Is it really worth it because you just lost the ball? And now the other team has the ball in a good spot. So James Cook has surpassed 1,000 rushing yards, though, for the first time in his career, reaching 1,038 yards at the end of the game. He's the first Bill to reach 1,000 rushing yards since LaShawn McCoy had 1,138 in 2017. Cook currently ranks 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards and 4th in the NFL with 1,471 yards from scrimmage.
2 fumbles aside.
Dog. Yeah, absolutely. A big game for wide receiver Gabe. Big game Gabe, I believe is what Tony Romo calls him.
Big game Gabe?
Yeah, I don't know. Every time, it always seems like every time that they have the Bills on CBS and you get Romo and Nance, Gabe Davis goes off. It's very strange.
I also feel like Romo gives him a new name every time the Bills are on CBS too that he calls them.
Sometimes I wonder if Tony Romo might be drunk. But anyways,
I guess
4 receptions on 6 targets for 130 yards and a touchdown. Whether Gabe Davis is on the score sheet or not, John, his presence.
Jim Nance has at least had a couple of martinis during the game.
Probably a couple Manhattans. Yeah, he's a little sloppy. Professional though.
He's got absolutely professional. But hello, friends. When you see, depending on how deep his "Hello, Friends" announcement is, will be that's the you'll know he's had quite a few of those Manhattans.
Probably smoked a couple packs of Marbreds too while you're at it, right? Get that real gravelly bass voice out here.
There you go.
So
just like they wrote about in the Bible.
Exactly, John. Even with Gabe Davis, either he's on the score sheet or he's not. His presence, and this pains me to say this, simply because Gabe Davis is in a contract year, and I feel like in Joe Brady's offense, he has had a more important role. His blocking has been something that has been incredible. I mean, we heard about it a few games ago where he had a stretch of games where he hadn't had any catches. Joe Brady's like, don't look at the fact that he's not catching the ball. Look at the fact that look at the run game. Yeah, look at the run game. He's opening up holes. He's helping out block, all that stuff. He's doing a great job. I mean, there is a reason why he wears the captain C on his jersey, not just because, they feel like he's a fan favorite or something. He's earned that, and he's shown that in games. And I mean, the production sometimes definitely leaves something more to be desired from a number 2. But in a game where Stephon Diggs had 5 receptions on 8 targets for 29 yards, you need a guy like Gabe Davis to step up, and he did.
Absolutely.
And it was incredibly impressive.
And I feel like there's something there with Josh and Gabe there as far as a connection there. Granted the times, the well-documented times where he's dropped some passes here and there, whatever, what have you, no big deal. But I feel like Josh gives him the opportunity, and by moving in the pocket like he does too and extending those plays, he gives him that opportunity to get his proverbial stuff in, get his catches, and it showed very well this game here too. Again, big game Gabe. All the eyes were on him. Well, unless you didn't have Peacock, then none of your eyes were on him. But all the eyes were on him, and he did his thing, and that's what you need to do to keep winning these games, stacking these W's.
Also, Chris Collinsworth is fucking annoying, dude.
Oh my God, I cannot stand him. I really can't.
The Chargers had like a rush for 6 yards. He's like, the game plan is really working for the Chargers. They got it going for them.
Yeah, right.
Relax.
Tell me you wanted the team to lose without actually saying it, Collinsworth.
Oh wow, you want the Bills to lose so that way your Cincinnati Bengals can squeak their way to the playoffs? Wow, I never would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, Stephon Diggs, we talked about his production on the field. With his 96th reception of the season, Diggs surpassed Eric Moulds and Peerless Price. Moulds had 94 in 2000, Price 94 in 2002.
Peerless Price, my boy.
Fifth most catches by a Bill in a single season. Although, something weird's going on with Stephon Diggs, John. He continued to increase his amount of snaps played on Saturday. He played 91.6% of the snaps at Philadelphia. That's a normal Stephon Diggs game. 79.2% at Kansas City, 45.6% versus Dallas, which could be attributed to the fact that they blew Dallas out. And then 60% at the Chargers. Is this something Bills fans should be concerned about, that not only is the on-field production dwindling, but also his playing time is dwindling? Now, after the game, Sean McDermott did comment saying he hadn't talked to the head trainer, but, quote, "Not that I'm aware of, but I understand that he was in and out maybe more than normal." So
I'm almost wondering if it's something mental, because I don't believe I saw anything on the injury report with him. Maybe he's hiding an injury. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's just something deeper than that. We unfortunately, for as much as I love Steph Diggs and I've been, hard on defending him against members of the Bills Mafia that think he's a prima donna, it also would not surprise me if there is something off the field that hasn't been addressed, that's been tight-lipped, that's preventing him from being himself. I'm not sure. Can only speculate now at this point. Hopefully he's well mentally and physically, because I'd hate to see anybody go down the tubes, for any reason other than, maybe he's just upset that he's not playing well or doesn't feel like he's playing well or something. But hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's nothing bad.
I mean, it's a long season one way or the other. If it's mental or physical, Stephon Diggs does not seem like he's 100%. But I mean, one good game could shut all that chatter down.
Right.
But it is something that is definitely starting. I mean, I hyper focus on it because I've got Stephon Diggs in fantasy. So I'm like, that's weird. He's not really producing. What's going on? Oh, he hasn't been playing.
I know. Going on? I know that the Bills need to essentially win out, right? Even though that there are, they've got their playoff spot. I don't want to say secure, but they're a favorite now to at least hit the wild card at minimum. But that said, the division's still in play, which means a home game. Buffalo plays
likely multiple home games,
perhaps, right? Given the way the Chiefs have been, but in the same, I'm wondering if this may be a thing where, okay, maybe the team, since the team around him is playing so well, the running game going pretty good, Josh being Josh, allowed to be Josh a bit, and Gabe Davis kind of coming out to his own again. Maybe they don't need Steph Diggs in the game plan as much, and maybe they're saving him for week 18 against Miami and potential playoff Steph. You know what I mean? Kind of like when they would rest the starters by a certain point in the season. I almost wonder if the team is kind of picking up enough to allow Steph to have additional rest or less reps, so that way he could be utilized a lot more and not be as tired come week 18 when it's all eyes are going to be on Buffalo and Miami there.
I mean, looking at the stats here, I'm trying to figure out
if McDermott isn't concerned, then I suppose, we shouldn't be, but again, we're a podcast.
I mean, he's had 8 drops this season recorded. His drop percentage is the same as it was last year. He had 8 drops all last year. Is 5.2% last year. It's 5.5% this year. I mean, I certainly think that Stephon Diggs had mentioned that, the struggles aren't on him a little earlier in the season, but clearly there's something not gelling right. And the Buffalo Bills obviously need to get that figured out, or get that handled, or get that massaged out,
for sure,
or get healthy, whatever it may be, just simply because at some point in time, you're going to need Stephon Diggs 100% to make that run. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about it here shortly, but a healthy Stephon Diggs is key to a deep playoff run for the Buffalo Bills.
Absolutely.
Putting a bow on the O here, running back Leonard Fournette, man, playoff Lombardi Lenny, not even playoff Lenny. Lombardi Lenny makes his Buffalo Bills debut. He was activated off the practice squad prior to the game for the first time since signing with the Buffalo Bills on Halloween. He had 5 rushes for 20 yards. Dude, he even returned a kickoff.
Right. He just wanted an opportunity.
Yeah, at one point, from what they said, the broadcast, he actually went to the special teams coach and said, "I'll return kicks. I don't care. Like, just get me on the field." And he filled in admirably for injured running back Ty Johnson, who missed Saturday's game with a shoulder injury. I don't know if the plan is to keep bringing Fournette up, but I certainly like what he brings to the offense as a runner, as a fresh set of legs, as a blocker in the pass game.
He's got a good burst
but also he can catch the ball to the backfield, and he's done it successfully for so long that it's almost like an embarrassment of riches. Yes, Ty Johnson has looked good recently, but imagine swapping Ty Johnson out for Leonard Fournette. Like, man, come on.
Yeah, it's embarrassment of riches there. I mean, I think Fournette I'd like to see more out of him, honestly, but not at the expense of killing the team dynamic. If Ty Johnson's the man for that role, then slot him in there. But Fournette definitely showed signs of still having some something in the tank there. Like I said, there was that one carry. I can't remember exactly whereabouts it was, but he had a good opening, and he had a real good burst and seemed to go through there real fast before being tackled. And it's that kind of stuff you look for, and he still has it. He wants the opportunity. He feels he could still do it. I'd rather have somebody that, believes in himself that much and do that than have nobody. And, even if he's on the practice squad again, it's nice to have him in the back pocket.
Well, if I'm not mistaken too, it doesn't matter if I stand corrected if I'm not right here, but if I'm not mistaken, you get 3 call-ups, and then the 4th time you have to sign a contract. But in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. You get essentially unlimited. So I almost wonder if Ty Johnson still is nursing a shoulder injury, which we're going to keep an eye on the injury report this week, that maybe they let Ty Johnson rest up again because they know what they have in him. Whereas with Leonard Fournette, they can bring him out, do the same thing, try to maybe even help keep James Cook a little fresh, because at this point, obviously, it's a long season. James Cook has looked absolutely fantastic when he runs the ball. But maybe trying to get a little bit more of Leonard Fournette involved just to see, again, what you have there. Maybe he can unlock even something more in this Bills offense. I don't know, but we'll keep an eye on that. But the other thing I want to talk about real quick, John, self-inflicted adversity. Buffalo lost the turnover battle 3-0, 3-0, and was outpossessed 33 minutes and 4 seconds to 26 minutes and 56 seconds. The Chargers ran 65 plays to Buffalo's 52. Josh Allen said postgame that Buffalo will be getting the best shot from every team moving forward, obviously including on Saturday night. But again, as we talked about at the start of the podcast, an ugly win is a win, and the Buffalo Bills just need to keep winning, baby. That's it. That's all they got to do is keep winning.
Indeed. And I failed. I'm sorry, Ryan. I was not able to find or get the sound that you wanted by podcast time here, but
we'll get it. We got time.
We'll get it we'll get it between now and season's end.
Breaking down the defense, defensive tackle Ed Oliver recorded 2 sacks, including the game-sealing sack of Los Angeles Charger quarterback Easton Stick here. Oliver's 8.5 sacks are a career high and second among interior defensive tackles in the NFL this season.
Speaking of which, how hard was Collinsworth rooting for Easton Stick there? Like he acted like Easton Stick was Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, it's definitely one of those games where I was like, I'm about to mute this because it's just awful. Like, I like it. I like the discourse when it's a little bit of both. But it's clear that they were just going hard on the Chargers doing the damn thing against the surging Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, he again, tell me you didn't want the team to win without telling me you didn't want the team to win.
Yeah, exactly. Now covering the field here, John, defensive tackle Poona Ford and cornerback Rasul Douglas each recorded their first sacks of the season. Now, here's the interesting thing about Poona Ford. He hadn't played since October 26th against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he played 29 total snaps. He had been mentioned recently about how it's kind of frustrating to be in the role that he's in, thinking he'd come to Buffalo, play a big role. He's been really the 4th or 5th defensive tackle, but he finished Saturday's game with 33 total snaps and a stat line of 2 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 quarterback hit. He made the most of the absence of defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, while the return of defensive tackle Taquan Jones looms large. Again, we know Poona Ford can play very well. We know he can change games because of his size and skill and ability, or skill and ability, they're the same damn thing, idiot. And from his days in Seattle, though, we know what he can do. So, again, maybe there's an opportunity to slot him in, give him a few more snaps and see what happens here. But good stuff either way. Also, linebacker Terrell Bernard recorded a sack pushing his season total to a career high 4.5 sacks. Also, kicker Tyler Bass, a 29-yard field goal with 28 seconds remaining in the game, goes in the books as his second game-winning field goal of the season. The big thing here, John, that all of my Bills friends were yelling about at the same time, including myself, is that on the ensuing kickoff with 28 seconds left, did Sean McDermott learn anything?
Oh, my God. Yeah. When I saw that, I'm like, what the hell?
He had Bass run a squib kick, which shows Sean McDermott is learning something.
He might be. You know what he should do, though, is maybe direct some of that squib kick knowledge over to Robert Saleh because of the end of the Jets football team game yesterday. I will never call them the Commanders. I'm sorry. They're the Washington football team to me. But
that's fair.
But, it should have been a squib to end the game, and instead they allowed it to kick in the back. So if he's learning something, better late than never, I suppose, McDermott, right?
Especially at the end of the game when time is precious, and if you can take off an extra 3, 4, 5 seconds, that's an extra play or two. So we're going to take a quick break. We will be back right after this quick. Again, I'm repeating myself. Let's try that again. We'll be right back after this quick break with more Trust the Podcast here on the Gear Radio Network. And we're back here on Trust the Podcast, wrapping up Week 16, our Around the NFL, brought to you by our friends over at Go Frost Yourself.
Yes, indeed. Located in Rochester, New York, Go Frost Yourself does what other local bakeries do not. They bake from scratch, creating recipes themselves and using the best fresh ingredients they can find to create delicious flavors for customers daily. Molly and Jen. Hi, Molly. Hi, Jen. They've worked tirelessly to create what Go Frost Yourself has become today, and their passion can be tasted in the items that they bake. When you find yourself looking for an item for a special occasion, or maybe you just want to try their incredible cinnamon rolls, if you are local, you can visit Go Frost Yourself's storefront at 2544 Ridgeway Avenue or at gofrostyourself.com. That's yourself, not Go Frost Yourself. Go Frost Yourself. Y-O-U-R.
Yep.
Back to you, Ryan.
Thank you. This one's titled, Feels Like the First Time. John, the Detroit Lions clinched their first division title in 3 decades, and in the NFL's second longest active drought without winning a division title. That now goes to the Cleveland Browns, who last won their division in 1989. Detroit has won the NFC North for the first time. And for perspective, Detroit quarterback Jared Goff was born in 1994 and not alive the last time Detroit won their respective division. But I must say, toot my own horn on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I called this on a podcast earlier this year.
I think you did, actually. Yes, I want to say you did.
I mean, it's not something that was very, very risky to do, but I feel good about it.
Well, when you looked at the NFC North at that time, they looked like the most complete, comprehensive team there. The Chicago Bears looked like garbage. The Green Bay Packers had a ton of question marks you weren't aware of or weren't sure. And then the Minnesota Vikings started off very, very slow. Kirk Cousins got injured, and you didn't know what they were going to be. So it wasn't necessarily it wasn't like the worst pick or like the hot take pick. You know what I mean? Given what you had. Now, I will say, will they be able to repeat next year? I like what I've seen out of the Green Bay Packers in spite of some of their boneheaded plays. Keep in mind the Packers are a very young team, but Jordan Love, his numbers are almost equivalent in the passing game to Josh Allen this year. That's something to look at, and that's something to see how he progresses from this season into next with Green Bay. I think if anyone in that NFC North is going to is going to challenge Detroit for the division, Green Bay is knocking at that door next year.
I certainly think that I've always talked about how I feel like Detroit's message can be a little abrasive on the outside looking in, because we've seen it in hockey before. As mentioned with John Tortorella, I've talked about this 100 times, it feels like, but I feel like everybody on that team is buying in, so that message won't get old. They'll just keep getting better and better with Jahmyr Gibbs, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Aiden Hutchinson, with that great defense, with that great offense. They may take a step back when Ben Johnson ultimately goes and takes a head coaching job somewhere, rightfully deserved, or if Aaron Glenn, I believe that's their defensive coordinator, goes and takes a job that he is also very qualified for. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they've got the pieces that they need. They've got the head coach they need, and everybody is buying in, which is why it's worked out so well this season. I also didn't put this in the notes, but I love the fact that even though, yes, Aaron Glenn is the defensive coordinator, even It took 3 years, I believe it was, and it's incredibly petty, and I love Calvin Johnson for it. The Lions wished him congratulations on making it to the Hall of Fame, and he waited until the Lions won the division to say, thanks, guys.
Good. I'm glad that they had a little happy ending there. I know they had quite the falling out towards the end of Calvin Johnson's career. I do wish that he was afforded the opportunity to go to a different team and contend when it was time, because the dude really was a game changer and wasted all those years in terrible Detroit teams. But I'm glad that they patched it up and that he's, not only being acknowledged by the team, but acknowledging the team as well. And part of them, Megatron was an incredible receiver. And I feel like, while he's obviously always going to be a Detroit Lion, I think he's our generation's Barry Sanders. Well, not really I can't say our generation, this generation's Barry Sanders, because I was around for Barry Sanders too.
That's fair. Robert Saleh confirmed a return, and he also apologizes subsequently. New York Jets owner Woody Johnson confirmed head coach Robert Saleh will return in 2024. Later in the week, Saleh apologized for lack of adjustments after Aaron Rodgers' season-ending Achilles injury. He says, quote, "When you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, you're going to build it around his strengths, period. That's a very common thing throughout the league. It's not just a Jets thing. That's league-wide. Could we have done things better? I'm talking about myself and the coaching staff with regards to, all right, this is our worst-case scenario. Now what? Absolutely. And it was something that we will make sure that we do a heck of a lot better in 2024, or a lot better within 2024.
Well, regardless of what their plan is, it has to be, and it has to begin and end with that offensive line. It seriously was the worst. It seriously was the worst offensive line I've ever seen. And I'm not saying this as a Jets fan. I'm saying this as a pro football fan. That was arguably one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. And a lot of that, don't get me wrong, injury based, right? Because it really started adjusting and changing as each domino was falling. In the beginning, the first 3 or 4 weeks, they were still winning, but once they started, key players started going out, Elijah Vera Tucker and all them started going out, that's when you started seeing Zach Wilson scramble, run for his life, and there's no protection at all. Breece Hall couldn't get anything to the inside at all and had to, constantly try and go for the outside. So hopefully they bolster the hell out of that offensive line. I don't care if it's through free agency or the draft, but they kind of mailed in the season. I think after like week 7, they said, okay, this is going to be a throwaway year and we're going to put all our eggs into the next season's basket, which sucks as a fan of the team, but in the same, poor planning.
My question for you though is, did they find themselves getting caught up in the Aaron Rodgers return hype? Because there were multiple opportunities for the New York Jets to go out and get something that was better than what they had. I mean, yeah, Zach Wilson has played his ass off certain weeks. Other weeks he's looked like ass. But when you're playing Trevor Siemian and then Tim Boyle, I mean, how many games are you expecting to win? That defense could probably drag a limp dick offense to the playoffs, but this offense is lifeless.
They played Siemian this week. He played Siemian this week because Wilson was out on concussion protocol because he got concussed last week.
Yep.
They played Tim Boyle, in my honest opinion, because of fan pressure. I think they succumbed to fan pressure with that one, because Zach, while he wasn't putting up gaudy numbers, who could it with that offensive line in front of him? I remember that game you were saying. We were talking about, and I was like, you were like, Breece is really that guy. I was like, dude, he's got the worst offensive line trying to create holes for him. And then literally the next play, you saw how depleted that offensive line was, how terrible they were. And I texted you back. I was like, see what I mean?
I just worry for you and for Jets fans. I mean, because, at the end of the day, it works out for the Bills if the Jets are dog water. Mm-hmm. But with showing the inability to detach themselves from the Aaron Rodgers injury situation, I mean, we've seen how the AFC has played out. We've seen how the NFL has played out. I think, in my humble, somewhat expert opinion, I have a podcast, I'm an expert, clearly, that the New York Jets probably could have saved their season, or at least made a deeper run. God forbid Aaron Rodgers decided he could return, or they were better, that would make it more attractive. Personally, I don't think it was ever going to happen because that's absolutely insane and reckless to ever let someone come back that quick, even if he is healthy. But I don't know if it's ownership that, I mean, I would presume ownership wanted Zach Wilson to start because from what we've heard since Zach Wilson has become a New York Jet, that was an ownership thing. They wanted Zach Wilson. What you made your bed, you got to lay in it. So like, let's keep playing him. But then after that, I mean, there were talks coming out that Joe Flacco wanted to go back to the Jets before going to the Browns. And it's like, you have these opportunities to go out and get guys who may not be good at quarterback or may not be great at quarterback, but they can be good. They can go out and manage a game and give you a chance to win. And here's where
I kind of challenge that and challenge anybody that says, yeah, well, you could have gotten this or you could have gotten this guy. You could have doesn't matter. Even if Aaron Rodgers didn't get injured 4 plays into the season, if that offensive line got injured at the rapid fire pace that it got injured, regardless, we'd be talking about the trade for Aaron Rodgers being a complete waste of a complete bust because we're such a quarterback. Everything is so hyper focused on the quarterback. Quarterback doesn't make all those blocks in the offensive line. Quarterback doesn't open up those holes.
But what I'm throwing a BLTD here style, John. What I'm boiling it down to, I agree with what you're saying. The offensive line has been horrible. I've again bringing it back to making about my fantasy football team because everybody clearly cares about that. I've seen Breece Hall. I've seen what he's done this year. When he's good, he's great. When he's not, you look at the game tape and you're like, wow, that offensive line is awful. It's like a wet paper bag. It's terrible. But my coworkers can attest to this. One of my favorite sayings lately has been, deciding to do nothing is still deciding to do something. And I think when the New York Jets decided we're going to stick with what we've got because Aaron can come back, because again, that was the message that was coming out of the Meadowlands. That decision right there honestly should have cost them their jobs. They're very lucky that the ownership is bought into what they have going, because again, the Jets defense is fantastic. Most of those players should come back next year and they should be perfectly fine. The offense does need to get better, but when you have a quarterback in the backfield who is not Trevor Siemian, no offense, not Tim Boyle, no offense, Zach Wilson, anybody like that, Aaron Rodgers isn't walking through that door this year, but somebody else could. We've seen quarterbacks on the move. We've seen guys sign off the practice squad. Take a shot on somebody. Go out and say, look, you've got some potential talent. Our season's blown, but hey, maybe we can go find the next Jets quarterback to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a year or two. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I think nobody really wanted to go there to get murdered. That's the other thing too. The offensive line, albeit bad. I mean, we could talk about this all day. Albeit it's a bad offensive line. If you get a quarterback behind that can make a quicker decision than what you've seen so far, things look a little better because it's cover. You can cover up for those mistakes. You can cover for those errors. Yes, there's probably going to be a lot more. You can get somebody to release the ball in 2 seconds versus 4 or 5. If you've got a guy if you've got a guy back there who can go, all right, my first look is covered, I'm going to check it down. Great. Not my first look, my second look, back to the first, back to the, oh my God, I just got lawn darted at midfield. Like that's what I'm saying. If you can get a guy out there who could even manage the game, that's like a worthwhile game manager, the Jets could probably find themselves in the playoff hunt this season. But again, their decision to do nothing was a decision to do something. Yeah. And that's the hill that I'm dying on, because again, it wasn't like this happened in November. Right. It happened 4 plays into the season. And that's when you need to go, all right. It's like hockey with goaltenders. You're not going to be able to acquire a goaltender in the first month of the season, but you can at least go out to do your due diligence to say, hey, we're going to go make sure we do the best thing we possibly can for this team, not just, nope, season's over, 4 games into the season, we're screwed. So we'll see you in September. Like that's awful. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying there. And I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around that. Absolutely. I think what it boils down to is, and I hate to say the noviceness, because Salah's in year 3 now. And Joe Douglas is in, I think, year 4 or 5 as GM. So I can't really say that they're novice at
they should have an understanding or of the expectation of the position. I think they just, I can't really explain it. There's so much blame to go around.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because again, it's one thing to say, look, we had a bad year, we'll be back, and then it's another thing for the head coach to come out and say, look, like Bradley Cooper in The Hangover, look, we fucked up.
Like,
yeah.
I can tell you this right now. It's nice that Woody gave them the chance to return. But if this is a repeat issue next year, if they don't see success, I guarantee you, Salah's gone midseason.
I mean, I look at it this way: if they don't bring in Aaron Rodgers, if he's healthy and he walks through that door for training camp, Aaron Rodgers is starting. But you need to go out and you better spend however much it costs to make sure you have a worthwhile backup quarterback, someone who will be, I would say maybe like a 1B or even a 2, like a solid 1B type of guy. Again, they're probably, and I don't have any insider information on this, but my thought outside looking in as just as a journalist, as a fan, as an obviously expert opinion with my podcast, as mentioned, they're probably kicking themselves real goddamn hard for not re-signing Mike White.
I'm sure they are, because Mike White was in their system and he knew the system. He knew the fan base. He knew the team. He had rapport with everybody. They
again, there's probably also egos in play too, John. Sorry to jump in, but that just popped in my mind. There's probably a lot of, hey, we don't want to piss Aaron off. We don't want to give him any undue pressure. We want him to make the decision. But at some point in time, you have to be I feel like if this were, again, this is apples to oranges, different ends of the spectrum. If this were to happen to like the Patriots or something,
right?
Bill Belichick would say, look, deal with it. Where the Jets are trying to like coddle to not upset him, whatever. You're not walking through that door. You're not playing this year. We got to do what's best for the franchise.
Yeah,
you're our guy, but you can't play right now. So we need to do what's best for the team. Well, and it seems like that might also play into it too.
Yeah, and I can tell you this: I don't think Lazard will be back, so he won't have that target. Randall Cobb's probably retiring after this season.
There's already rumors of more guys he wants to bring in. Apparently, they want to bring Devontae Adams and David Bakhtiari and a bunch of other. The New York Packers are.
I saw that and I questioned that because they're not really going to have the room to bring a Devontae Adams in anyways and Bakhtiari in anyways. I feel like that's like a quick, easy piece of journalism. Name off a Green Bay Packer that Aaron Rodgers played with and slap the rumor has it. Right. Exactly. Rumor has it they want to bring so-and-so to play
rumor in New has York it with Aaron Rodgers. Is going to join the New York Jets as an official team photographer.
No, please, God, no. We don't need that guy.
Hashtag crock cock. I wouldn't look that up. I have not looked that up before, but I probably wouldn't suggest looking that up on Twitter.
As Jen Sturger once said, he was not Green Bay packing.
Yikes! Well, hey, speaking of packing, the MVP race is not packed.
No,
nobody seems to want the MVP, John, and it's weird how this is working out. San Francisco quarterback Brock Purdy entered the week as the odds-on favorite to win the NFL MVP. He responded with a 4-interception performance and a 33-19 loss. I put victory, but loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Baltimore, their quarterback, Lamar Jackson, his MVP case is shooting through the roof, which if history is any sign, bad news for Bills fans because the Bills need the Ravens to beat the Dolphins this coming up week. Now, Baltimore is 12-3. Lamar Jackson has 4,143 total yards, 24 total touches, 19 passing, 5 rushing. The fewest touchdown passes by a league MVP is 24 by Steve McNair in 2003. But John, with this being a podcast, I'm going to bring it all back and tie it back in. If Buffalo wins out and wins the AFC East with the MVP being the quote, "What have you done for me lately?" quarterback award, does Josh Allen win that elusive MVP award? Right now, 4,191 total yards, 40 total touchdowns, 27 passing, 13 rushing. Josh Allen has more passing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson has total touchdowns. Again, it's hard to say because if Baltimore wins out, they're 14-3. If Buffalo wins out, they're 11-6. So
I feel like
but it's what have you done for me lately?
But right, I feel like at minimum he will be up for the conversation. He'll be top two or three. Right. Here's where I feel it will differ. It will depend on how far each team, Baltimore or Buffalo, advance in the playoffs.
Well, remember,
if Baltimore were to get the number
twisted.
1 seed, what?
John, don't get it twisted, young man. Don't get it twisted, young man. Remember, it's voted on before the playoffs because that's the one thing people get their nuts in a twist. They go, "Oh my God,
right, you're right.
Joe Burrow led the Bengals to the Super Bowl and he ended up being blah 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 in the MVP." It's that's why I mentioned the what have you done for me lately nature of it. With
so then
it's Brock Purdy. It's Brock Purdy.
By that case,
4 picks.
By that
it's now
case,
Lamar Jackson.
I would say what Josh Allen has done and is doing is far more impressive than what Lamar Jackson is doing. And I certainly think it's a hell of a lot more impressive than what Brock Purdy is doing and did, right? So he is absolutely in that consideration. The only thing that I would say that could be up there, and when I say top 3, obviously you got Lamar Jackson up there. Josh Allen will be up there. I still think McCaffrey gets consideration for that. And I know that no wide receiver, and I know that no wide receiver has ever won the MVP before. But I do think you should give Tyreek Hill some consideration because that dude has made Tua.
If I were to rank it right now, my thought would be that McCaffrey is the NFC Offensive Player of the Year. Tyreek is the AFC. McCaffrey ends up being the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year. Then the MVP will either be Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa, or Josh Allen. Because at this point, Josh Allen is the what have you done for me lately? If they win, if they get hot, they win out. Great. They'll get it. Whereas it honestly, it looks like it's going to shake out. In my opinion, it'll shake out this way. Baltimore, I don't want to say that they're going to lose this week but I'm just basing it off of like how this has historically been the past few weeks. Lamar Jackson is the MVP, quote unquote, favorite now. He goes into Miami. He stumbles. Miami wins. Now Miami gets the East. But then also, Lamar loses his MVP steam, and then all of a sudden, it becomes Tua Tagovailoa. The Bills then come into town and play the Dolphins the last game of the season, beat the Dolphins, and then Josh Allen gets that momentum. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. I hope I'm wrong, but that's just how it's been historically the past few weeks. Now, John, looking ahead, real quick to wrap up the podcast here. We've had a very good, healthy chat here today, and I very much appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
If the season ended today, Buffalo, the 6th seed, in the AFC, not per tiebreakers, just straight up the 6th seed. I forgot to take that part of the sentence out. On November 26th, John, 1 month ago today, not even 1 month, 1 month ago, I'm going to keep saying it. The Buffalo Bills dropped a must-win against Philadelphia in overtime. Their playoff odds stood at roughly 21%. We're talking fire Sean McDermott. We're talking they're going to need so much help, blah, 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 this, that, and that. Looking like Charlie Day, that meme from It's Always Sunny with all the lines in the paper. That was the Buffalo Bills. On December 26th, again, 1 month later, the Buffalo Bills sit comfortably in the playoffs as the 6th seed, controlling their own destiny with 2 weeks to go in the regular season. They're up from a 69% chance last week. This week, based on roughly 384,672 simulations, chances of making the playoffs are 90%. In the AFC,
that is why I always say, and you always say too, your favorite thing if the season ended today. That is why I always say, thankfully, the season does not end today.
No, I thought you were going to say you play to win the game.
Well, you play to win the game.
Because that's a perfect one right there. Baltimore, the 1 seed in the AFC right now, it would be the Colts versus the Dolphins, the Bills versus the Chiefs, the Browns versus the Jaguars. Obviously, the first team the road, the second team the home. In the NFC, San Francisco holds on to that 1 seed in a 3-way tie. Seattle to Philadelphia, the Rams to Detroit, Dallas to Tampa Bay, whose upstart good Lord, Baker Mayfield looking like a real number 1 quarterback in Tampa Bay. Watch out for him. They are.
Watch out for those doggone Rams though too.
Yeah,
they're surging at the right time as well.
That's one thing I wanted to mention. You just brought it back to my head real quick. I want to say this. They were talking before the Bills. They were talking after the Bills game. Who is scarier right now? The Bills or the Rams? They said, I can't remember who said it, but one of the guys said it's got to be the Rams because they're clicking on all cylinders. They're firing on all cylinders right now. They've done great with Stafford, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, the defense. But here's the thing. The Bills are doing the same exact thing not firing on all cylinders. You've got Steph Diggs not looking great. You've got Gabe Davis, who one game catches 130 yards, next game has 10 yards. So it's like they're not all firing at the same time. Again, we've talked about why that happens with Gabe Davis, whatever. But I would rather look at the Bills and say they're scarier because they are not firing on all cylinders, are still finding ways to win games, and are marching their way back into the AFC East, which again, right now, John, mathematically still alive in that race. They need to defeat New England this week, need Miami to lose to Baltimore, which very plausible. This sets up that week 18 winner-take-all matchup. But in week 17, the big matchups that have playoff implications, you've got Detroit at Dallas, the Rams at the Colts, the Saints at the Buccaneers, Miami versus Baltimore, Cincinnati versus Kansas City, and Green Bay versus Minnesota. The big games there, you want to see, if I remember correctly, Kansas City beat Cincinnati. And then I believe you want to see Seattle beat the Steelers. And then obviously Buffalo beating New England. That kind of, I wrote it down here. I'll tell you in a second. I outdid myself again.
But if Miami wins, they win the division.
If Miami beats Baltimore, they win the division. That is correct. Okay. Because even with the same record as the Bills, it would still end up being, I believe Miami would have tiebreakers based on something. I don't know.
The NFL script writers would love the Bills visiting Kansas City again in the playoffs. That's why I'm saying that.
I'm sure they would. Those sons of bitches. Speaking of sons of bitches, though, John, the Buffalo Bills host the New England Patriots week 17 in what likely is Bill Belichick's final time at Highmark Stadium as the head coach of the New England Patriots. Excuse me, kickoff at 1 p.m.
Very, very weird to say that and weird to hear that.
Beat his ass. That's all I got to say about that. Not Kansas City. Good Lord. New England, 4-11, 3-4 away. Last in the AFC East. New England quarterback Bailey Zappi, a good name there. 25-33, 256 yards with 2 touchdowns in a
Zappy mania, brother.
26-23 win over Denver in week 16. 87% of America, John, believes Buffalo will defeat the Patriots according to ESPN Analytics without help. According to New York Times Playoff Simulator, Buffalo's playoff chances bump to 98% with the win. Also, according to New York Times, Buffalo moves to 100%. And this is what I was trying to remember before, with a Tennessee win over Houston, a Seattle win over Pittsburgh, and a Kansas City win over Cincinnati. So again,
all of those 3 things, very, very doable.
Don't get it twisted. Buffalo does not need help. They control their own destiny. If they win, they're either.
What a sharp contrast from a couple weeks ago, too, right?
It's the way that the NFL has played out this year, unbelievable.
So weird, man. But it's made for the season to be a one to remember in a very unique way, right? Because it's the season of the backup quarterback, essentially. When you look at all around, but I mean, just how things have, how close to the wire things are coming from an NFL PR perspective, you couldn't have had it any better.
Well, and it's great too, because those backup quarterbacks are going to make some tough decisions, even tougher in the offseason, which we can obviously talk about here in the future. But for now, John,
hold on. I am among the 87%, and I also believe that the Buffalo Bills are going to win. It's not like when they visited New England. They're New England's coming here to Buffalo, and this is a very, very incredibly difficult place to play. I'm not even
going to go with that, John. I'm just going to say, when the Buffalo Bills played the New England Patriots and lost, that Buffalo Bills team feels like that was a Bills team of 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a much different team. This is a much different team now. Absolutely. But I will say this. Hey, Boomer, what do you think?
No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
I was trying to throw it to that, and you beat me to it. I was going to say, but what does Boomer think? But you got me. You got me, you son of a bitch. I'll get you next
There
week.
There it is.
With that being said, for John Cimino, I am Ryan Wolfe. As always, we are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
We will catch you same time, same place next week. As always, go Bills. Just win, baby. Doesn't matter how ugly, how pretty. A win at the end of the day, my friends, is a win.
Happy New Year, everybody. Ciao, ciao.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.